I also request you to kindly switch on the recording.
Right. I've switched it on.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Right. So when we discuss, I'm here to talk about fundamental duties. And when you talk about fundamental duties, the main plank of my speech in another half an hour would be that duties and rights are correlative. They are the two sides of the same coin. So I'll try to establish this fact and also try to tell you that it's not just fundamental duties that are important, but it is also about our civilizational duties, moral duties, religious duties, institutional duties, familial duties, fraternal duties, and the scope of all our duties is just widening this horizon and to be able to tell what we can do as individuals for the society. So in order to begin about fundamental duties, I'm going to touch upon different aspects, not just discuss 11 fundamental duties, but also raise some very pertinent questions to give you food for thought at the end of my session here. So when when you talk about fundamental duties, right? So you discuss rights and duties that are correlative and inseparable, right? When you talk about the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, he has said that they sprout from the same seeds. It was no different when you look at the Indian society or when you look at the Indian independence movement. You feel obligated to doing something towards your society. So this obligation that you feel towards giving it back, also in the form of CSR or other positive externalities in the society, is codified in the form of fundamental duties. Fundamental duties was never a part of the original constitution when the constitution was drafted on 26th, when it was done on the 26th of January 1950. It was introduced through the recommendation of Swaran Singh Committee report and came in by the 42nd Amendment Act in Article 51 in Part 4A of the Indian Constitution. When you talk about the 10 fundamental duties that have been enshrined in the Constitution then, and when you talk about one fundamental duty that was inserted in the Constitution in 2002, right, with 86th Constitutional Amendment, it is not just the codification and knowing about these duties, but learning about fundamental duties is also an exercise in self-introspection and to be able to map ourselves on the social map and to be able to see what we are expected to do as citizens. When we discuss fundamental duties, for example, just say about take the first fundamental duty that we have to abide by the constitution, respecting its ideals, institutions, national flag, national anthem. This comes very natural to us being the citizens of this nation, right? To be able to respect ideals, institutions, national flag, and national anthem. Second is again to cherish and follow noble ideas that inspired the national struggle. Now we all know that there have been different ideological forces of history that have pushed the 1930s and 1940s into independent era, and then the independent era into the planning era, where there was mixed economy, socialism, and that era has pushed India into the LPG era, and now we are in the 21st century. So this forces of history that have moved forward. What exactly has forced history to move forward from 1930 to 1940 to 1950 to 1960? These ideas that have inspired time and again, whether it be, following different ideologies and people belonging to different spectrums or spheres of life and different stratas, whether it be the communists, whether it be the rightists, whether it be the Indian National Congress, whether it be any association that was there at the time of independence, right? All of these ideas of noble ideas of respecting national flag, national anthem, national institutions, and to be able to cherish and to be able to have the kind of respect and love for authority and structures and sutures of authority that have been formed in Indian independence or independent era is one of the most pertinent fundamental duty that we have. The third fundamental duty is again to protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. When you talk about protecting the sovereignty, integrity, unity of India, it is not just up to the soldier class to protect the borders at the LSE with respect to China, here on the western frontier with respect to Pakistan. But it is our bounden duty to unite as Indians, to feel fraternal, to be able to break barriers across regions, across caste, across genders, and to be able to give that respect and to be able to give that love to each individual by the virtue of being a human being or an individual of belonging to the same species. And why just stick to same species, but go across biodiversities and to be able to give that due to every life that is existent on this earth. The next fundamental duty also talks about promoting of harmony, then the spirit of common brotherhood, which again speaks about fraternity, right? So when you just talk about fraternity, it goes about breaking barriers across sutures, across sections, and across diversities, and across different segments and classifications whether it be on the basis of caste, color, creed, sections, genders, across the board. So all this talk about the glue or the binding cement we as Indians have to build in an independent era. Duties, fundamental duties are nothing but obligations on all of us to follow certain ideals, to follow certain values. The next fundamental duty again talks about yes, Aditi, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, I think there was this issue with the range that is there in the college. So yes, it's okay. So I was telling you that there is again preservation of rich, heritage and country's composite culture. Now we as a culture or Indian society have to collectively understand what our culture is to be able to self-identify and to be able to accommodate and tolerate the existence of all religions. For example, selective composite culture, very beautifully amalgamates into the Pushkar Lake of Ajmer, or when you go to Lucknow or walk in the lanes of Ratlam, or go into Prayagraj where there is the Sangam of Yamuna and Ganga, Yamuna, the Tehzeeb that we talk about, the Lucknowi culture that we talk about, or also take in the folk lores or many classical dances of India, wherein there is a beautiful blend of all the cultures. For example, Kathak being one of them, where there is a beautiful Nawabi culture that is reflected in that, plus also many elements of the Indianness or the indigenous Indian elements that are beautifully mixed or intermixed or interwoven, not just in terms of arts, craft, architecture, traditions, and all of that, but also into our daily lives or also into the iconography of the cities as a republic as we celebrate this. So it talks about valuation and preservation of rich cultural heritage, of composite cultural history of India, not just in terms of history, but to be able to break barriers and to go across. Just to name few examples like Ajmer and Lucknow. And next duty that we have to follow or you're expected to follow is again to protection of environment, to show compassion for living creatures. Now we have to have this compassion for living creatures, for not just, it's just not a macro level problem that we face, but it is also a micro level problem when we talk about taking care of pets in colonies and in small city streets by keeping water for the birds in summers in tropical countries like India. Plus we also have the COP summit which the prime minister recently attended in Glasgow. So you also have from micromanaging to managing things like biodiversity, globalization, also the trading challenges, also all these threats that have been posed to biodiversity in different timelines and in different eras. So this again becomes a fundamental duty in order to have an environmental duty that you have towards other fellow creatures. So the constitution is so expansive and the interpretation goes far and beyond, where the constitution does not speak about just does not speak about human beings. It also speaks about the kind of compassion that you have to have for birds or compassion for animals and just generally plants and wildlife, so on and so forth. The next most important duty that one has to follow, that is enshrined in Article 51A, is to develop scientific temper, human spirit of inquiry. Now this is one of the most fundamental elements that have been coming and taken from the phase of Renaissance and Reformation. It's a product of history where people have realized the importance of logic, the importance of human rationality, the importance of logical thinking, critical ability, critical analysis, and just to be able to think logically, right? Because this is again one more trait where people do debate and discuss the argument itself. They're not able to narrow down on a topic of discussion, right? So that's a cause of worry where the education system is not very well equipped to handle the logical flow or the logical thinking that people should be able to have. And in order to develop scientific temper, and this temperament of human spirit is extremely important. For example, there were messages that were being circulated on WhatsApp saying that when the prime minister very rightly, in order to appreciate the spirit of our frontline workers, asked us to ban thalis and to bring in, clappings, that was a very good gesture that we had to show towards them. But then at the same time, you had WhatsApp messages being circulated saying that clapping of thalis and lighting of diyas would kill the virus and so on and so forth. That were the messages that we were being circulated. So that has to, the scientific temperament of everything, of being being suspicious and being being able to inquire, being a little inquisitive, and being a little curious in knowing things, and are a food for inventions and discoveries, not just in terms of science, but also in terms of daily conversations, because they also have to move with the changing time. So this interpretation of this fundamental duty goes far wide and beyond for me. Again, the next duty that we can talk about is to safeguard public property and adjure public violence. So when you talk about JAT protests, when you talk about CA protests, when you talk about farmer protests, this is one of the fundamental duties for any protest, for any social movement, for any protesting movement that there is ongoing in this country. India is famously called as the land of million mutinies, where there is mutiny that is ongoing now and then. There are ripple effects going. But at the same time, when you have woven your history through a Gandhian thought, and when you woven your history and independent history through a planning process, violence is something that you have to stay away from, because that again is a problem for law and order. So this is again a fundamental duty where you are asked to safeguard public property, to adjure violence. But when we see there are muds and pots that have been kept outside in summers by municipal corporations, for example, the taps in railways that people have and they take it back home, you know, small little things like that. So it is not just important and imperative for all of us to appreciate, to be able to value Taj Mahal or Red Fort, but it is also our duty that somebody does not have a scratch, somebody does not scratch the surface of that very imperative monument of Ajanta, of Rashtrakuta temples, of all the UNESCO heritage sites that there are in India. So this becomes very important. But one of the most important and interesting interpretation for me also I would also want to touch upon the aspect of spitting in daily life, that people usually very casually spit on the roads. That's also hampering public property, because public roads and transportation, all of this becomes important. So the interpretation goes far, it goes beyond that. So it's up to us to take those interpretation in that spirit. Again, the next important duty, that one of the fundamental duties that is enshrined in Article 51A, is again to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individuals, so that nation constantly rises to newer heights. So it's very important that you develop a national character. It's very important that you have ambition. It's very important that you do well, not just in your professional life, but you do well in your personal life. You do well when you enjoy landscapes and just the beauty of every sphere of life. When you talk about success and when you talk about life, I think it's very imperative to talk about balanced success in life, that you have a success as a son, you have a success as a sister, as a brother, as a father, as a mother. So you're able to cater to all spheres of life, so that all the finer things in life and all the beautiful things in life come your way. It's this essential element in fundamental duties that is very imperative for all of you to be able to gauge and to be able to rise above self, so that nation constantly rises, because the nation is made up of its people. And if the people are able to cater and bring in a happy society where there is happiness quotient is extremely high, where work culture like Germany is promoted, where the work culture productivity is extremely high, that kind of work culture, that kind of happy space and happy environment has to be created, and that has to be catered to. Because when you rise above hate, when you rise above petty narrow considerations in your mind, when you rise above the educational deficit that has been created in our mind, when you rise above all the small little things and all the small little quarrels and complaints that we have in life, it's then that you enter the realm of happiness, of so that nation constantly is rising, your nation constantly is rising. So you doing well in life is not just your duty, it's not good to your parents, it's not good just good to your friends, but it's good for the nation. So consider the next time you do or act anything, you should feel obligated, that I'm obligated to my country, I'm obligated to my society, I'm obligated to my neighbor, I'm obligated to the biodiversity that there is. So when you feel this obligation, you tend to change your behavior, and that is the ultimate motive of any fundamental duty that is there in Article 51A. Again, the last 11th fundamental duty that the duties talk about is to provide opportunities for education to the children or to ward, right? It's for the parents to provide education between the children who are between aged 6 to 14. It's up to the parents who have to provide education to them. But at the same time, I wouldn't look at this duty as a parentage duty, but we time and again see a lot of children working in dhabas, a lot of children working on the roads. It is but our duty as fellow citizens of India to be able to take care, to be able to take this responsibility, right? To get them admitted into through right to education, right? Free education, so on and so forth. So to be able to have children at school from belonging to age 6 to 14 is building tomorrow's India. So it's this change in perspective that you have to see, because every action that you do today will have implications tomorrow, right? So if you get a child permitted or get him into or her into education system, that means you're building tomorrow's India. So it is not just the government or the soldiers who bring and strengthen the system. It is we as citizens. It is when we do our civic duties that is extremely important. And life also, according to me, should not be viewed in this dichotomies of right and duties, because it's many of the times we keep this on the opposite spectrum, that duties and rights are opposite, but they can coexist. It's this coexistence that we as a society or as a collectivity, as an organization, have to strive for. There are many criticisms of this fundamental duties that you have. There are many features of fundamental duties that you have, because fundamental duties are not new to the Indian way of life. They are very integral to the Indian culture, or they're very integral to the Indian way of life. And we usually talk about sanskaras, but who defines what are good sanskars? Who defines where do you draw the line? And I don't think anybody's discovered the way of parentage or parenting children. It's people who become parents that discover on their way of becoming good parents, of becoming good sons. There's no strict definitions there. I think educational system has to explore this aspect also, along with building mental fortitude and mental strength, not just the theoretical part of it, but fundamental duties are practiced, and they could be practiced without you knowing that you are practicing fundamental duties. As is needless to tell you that fundamental duties in the constitution is non-justiciable part of the constitution. And then there are many criticisms on fundamental duties. For example, they are not very exhaustive. There has to be many duties that you must incorporate in the constitution, that they are vague, that they are ambiguous. So sometimes when you say that you have to respect your culture, what do you exactly mean by that? They are a little vague, right, as to what culture, what is the idea of culture in your mind that you have to respect, that you are expected to respect, and what exactly is respect? Should you say what is the definition of respect? Should you say that people who come and you stand, that would you say that you respect them? This itself is a gray area, right? Because no, do you fear the police or do you respect the police? Right? That's again a criteria that we have to define. And should you respect the police or should you fear the police? Now, that's again a gray area that one has to deal, right? So this again is an emotion that has to be dealt with. So all this aspect of our life has to be woven into our education system, and slowly this injection of fundamental duties has to be transferred into each one of us, our body, and to create this body politic and to be able to build modern India. So this is one more criticism of fundamental duties, where we talk about moral precepts, about them being superfluous, about adding more fundamental duties, so on and so forth. But addition of all these fundamental duties have not just the criticism part, not just its own features, but it also has its own significance that you must remember, because it's a continuous reminder on us as citizens, right? Because we as daughters and sons carry out our duties and responsibilities as children, but we often tend to forget that we have a larger family, that is the Indian state. And fundamental duties are a constant reminder on all of us about those warnings against anti-national activities, against those warnings of, again, being the source of inspiration, of promoting a sense of discipline amongst all of us. Small things that we do in life. It's a constant reminder to, to be clean, to be hygienic, to be able to follow all the guidelines. And, just this example of taking the vaccines now, always, you must always also keep in mind that the vaccine is not just for yourself, because the vaccine or the virus may harm your body or it may not harm your body, but the vaccine that you take is also for the people around you, for the people that you're going to go, for the children you're going to lift, and for all those people. So it's the perspective basically that I'm trying to refer to. Because when you take into larger obligations, and when you think that you not just have parental obligations, you have country's obligation, you have your society's obligation, and for every act that you do, you always have to think what implications is this act going to have, because there are many onlookers on all of us without we noticing them. So this is the best example that I see in life, as to how this question always makes me curious as to how children pick up language, how children pick up small habits. They are extremely observant, and they're not just conscious observants, but they are subconscious observants also. So they exactly replicate what we do as adults, right? And we unknowingly build tomorrow's India without us even noticing. An iota of notice is not there, about all these observations that are ongoing. So this all of this is, the duties span across all of this, right? Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the ex-Prime Minister of India, she famously remarked that inclusion of these fundamental duties would not is not to smother your rights, but it is to establish a democratic balance. Because we've learned about social contract of Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau. It's the citizens and the state that is bound in all of this. So, like I told you, that there are many enactments, there are many criticisms for fundamental rights, and many things that are, there. But when you look at the film, Om Puri's film, the National Award film winning the film Ardha Satya of 1973, you talk about the system and the difficulty in carrying out fundamental duties. Because when some of us follow the fundamental duties and the majority of us are not, then it becomes problematic for the minority who follows it. And this creates friction in societies. When you see the movie Newton or when you see the movie Satyagraha, you talk about all these duties. And like I told you at the very beginning, that it is not just about the fundamental duties. For me personally, it is about civilizational duties. Now, when you see a blind person walking down a road, should you help him or should you not help him? This is again a civilizational burden, the 5,000 old civilization that makes you help that person, or that what is the erosion of values that you do not help that person. This self introspection exercise through this lecture on fundamental duties again is a food for thought for all of us, and not just civilizational duties. Like I told you, that there are moral duties, religious duties, institutional duties, familial duties that you have. And when we teach children to question, we also at the same time teach them obedience. Where do you draw the line from questioning to being obedient, right? So this line has to be covered, and it has to be covered well, and it has to change with time. And also the duties that we have towards our old age population, also the duties that you and I have towards the orphans. They are the orphans of our society. They are not a nobody, right? They, supposing it's this disaster that have made them orphan, for example COVID, but we as a society, as a collective as a collective group, have to take care of orphans, of old age, of women in general, of building fraternity, of going against VIP culture, of taking care of our environment, or whether we need to codify this or do we not need to codify this, or all these silver linings on all these gray areas that you have, that are very pertinent for me. Lastly, I would, while deliberating on fundamental duties, I'd want to, leave you with three questions that I want you to think about as just students and as academicians. When you think about this, the questions of fundamental duties, it's a lot has to do with the interpretation of all these duties. And when we talk about the interpretation of all these duties, you have the interpretation of the codes that are duties. But we, as a society, have to collectively decide what kind of interpretation would we like to have. What are our goals? Is it long term? Is it mid term? Is it short term? So you have to be able to accommodate all this planning, all this management, to be able to have a clear vision and to be able to promote happiness among this workspace. Because having a vision does not mean that you are sitting there with a scale. It has a lot to do with you not being there, but still the work being going on. So this again, interpretation of course is again important. So I just want to raise three pertinent questions and then I'll end my talk. So first, the question that popped up into my mind while I was
Sir, you're not audible.
Uh, Several joint topics as a second ability.
right. So again, range issue. Good. Uh, should we, the three pertinent questions that I have is, should one transform the national flag and national anthem into some fossilized or statistic signatures of power and authority, which we, to which we have to bow down? Is that the definition of respect for us? Or should we bring in popular opinion or affection, or should it have place in creative imaginations of amongst the people or in society? Right? What kind of interpretation? Should it be statistic, fossilized visions of national flag and national anthem, that every time there is a national anthem that we have to stand? Or should it have a creative, popular, accommodative, tolerant, imaginative sphere in our lives. The next is, who defines what is constitutional patriotism? Who defines what is constitutional patriotism? I want all of you to think about this and what exactly is patriotism. The third thing, again, that we have to define is just to look back, go back to history a little. An Indian independence movement, for me personally, is a product of fight for rights by ordinary women and men. And when duties are something, that you cannot enforce in a democratic framework, that you cannot justify or cannot make it enforceable because you are in a contract with the state, you have formed the state. When you talk about constitution and constitutional values, duty
Aditi sir is joining shortly. Just a second, please.
झालं झालं Yes, Aditi, am I audible and visible?
Yes, sir, you're audible and visible.
Right. So the last question is again going back to history, where I have felt that Indian independence movement is a product of ordinary men and women who fought on the streets and fought for rights. The society has acquired rights. So it's not the state's obligation to enforce and inflict duties. It's the society's obligation to enforce its own duties and its own things, right? So the parents never expect, they've done their part. It's our duty, it's an understood civilizational duty that we take care. It's our understood civilizational duty that we help people cross road. It's our self-civilizational duty that we keep a ball outside for a bird, migratory bird who's probably coming from Siberia in tropical countries like India, right? So I have always wondered that the Indian independence movement have converted our subjects who are living under the British Raj, the princely states. It's a hard-fought battle that we've had of converting the subjects into citizens. The LPG era of 1991 has converted our citizens into clients. The democracy has converted our citizens into audiences. But the fundamental duty, watch, and a repeated reminder to be citizens, to remain citizens, to be aware, vigilant, active, and be on our toes, so that this slacky democracy does not slip us into an unruly system. It's very pertinent that you remain vigilant to be able to have this understanding about surrounding and also about yourself. With this, I have exceeded my time a little. So thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your